Victor was the kind of man who thrived on deals, deadlines, and double-shot espressos. An up-and-coming businessman in his late 20s, he had made a name for himself as a guy who could talk his way out of any problem. But none of his polished speeches or strategic mind had prepared him for this. It happened after a late-night grind session. Victor had stumbled home, exhausted, barely noticing his roommate Eric sprawled on the couch watching reruns of The Office. After a half-hearted greeting, Victor headed straight to bed, his tie still crooked, and collapsed onto the mattress. When he woke, it wasn't to the buzz of his phone or the scent of burnt toast wafting from the kitchen. It was to the strange sensation of fur brushing against the sheets. His limbs didn't move the way they should. His breathing felt shallow. He looked down and screamed, or at least tried to. He was a cat. A sleek, charcoal gray feline with piercing green eyes. Victor leapt off the bed, or rather, awkwardly stumbled and raced to the mirror. It was unmistakable. The reflection staring back wasn't he the tired but charming businessman he had worked so hard to become. It was a house cat. How? Why? His mind was a whirlwind of panic, disbelief, and frustration. Somewhere deep in his chest, a tiny urge to chase the reflection flickered, and he shoved it aside. Victor ran or scampered to the living room. Eric was sipping coffee, scrolling on his phone. "Eric!" Victor shouted, or tried to. What came out was an unimpressive, high-pitched meow. Eric looked up. "Oh, hey buddy, didn't know you were up." He reached down to scratch Victor's head. Victor dodged, yowling in protest, trying to convey, "Hey, I'm Victor. I'm not a cat. Help me." Eric chuckled. "Feisty. Must have missed breakfast, huh?" Victor sat there in disbelief, staring at his oblivious roommate. How was this possible? He tried to write a message in spilled coffee grounds. Eric frowned and wiped it up. He tried to paw at Eric's laptop keyboard. Eric shooed him away. He even attempted to pounce on a notepad and scribble something with a pen. Eric thought he was just playing. Days turned into weeks. Victor found himself caught between two worlds. His human mind was desperately trying to formulate plans to reverse the curse, while his new feline instincts started creeping in an overwhelming urge to chase strings, nap in patches of sunlight, and claw at the edges of furniture. It was a constant tug of war. His saving grace was Eric's bookshelf. Victor discovered that if he perched just right, he could push certain books to the floor, flipping open pages. Eric eventually noticed this habit and started jokingly calling him Book Cat. One day, Victor managed to knock over a particularly old tome titled Mysteries of Transformation and Transmigration. The cover art depicted an ominous illustration of a half-human, half-animal figure. Eric glanced at the book. Haven't seen this one in ages," he murmured, flipping through it lazily. Victor stared, wide-eyed. The pages described a bizarre ritual involving moonlight, specific herbs, and you guessed it, the presence of a cat. Victor leapt onto the page, pawing furiously to grab Eric's attention. Eric furrowed his brow. "What's gotten into you? You actually want me to read this?" Victor meowed insistently. Hours later, Eric found himself standing on the apartment's balcony under a full moon. He had gathered random herbs from the garden and one very suspiciously old spice jar while Victor sat in the middle of a chalk-drawn circle, feeling ridiculous but hopeful. "All right," Eric said, holding the book in one hand and waving a sage stick with the other. "Here goes nothing." He began chanting the strange phrases the book described. Victor felt a rush of cold air swirl around him, and then a flash. When Victor opened his eyes, he was sitting in the middle of the balcony, fully human. He glanced at his hands, his suit now wrinkled and fur-covered from his feline escapades. Eric dropped the sage stick. Vic, what just happened? Victor stared at his roommate, debating how to explain. Instead, he grinned. Let's just say I've been keeping an eye on you. Thanks for listening to the cat. Eric groaned. I think I need coffee. Lots of coffee, Victor chuckled, relieved to finally be himself again. But deep down, part of him would always miss the simplicity of cat life, though he could live without the furballs.